he undid my pants and took them down.
Edward Bullock was a county sheriff. He was a man who was sworn to protect and serve the community.
When he was on top of me, I couldn't breathe.
It's not just sexual assault, it's the murder of a person's soul.
Did you suspect Sheriff Bullock was sexually molesting children?
Yes.
County sheriffs are incredibly powerful figures in small communities, and Bullock was accused of abusing that power.
Someone in power like that, it's really can't be underestimated how much other people let them get away with things, that the rules are different.
And Warren County doesn't want to admit the truth. Warren County wants to keep the darkest chapter in its history buried and hope it never sees the light. When I was 10 years old in the courthouse, I was targeted by the former county sheriff, Edward Bullock.
The central character in our story was W.M.
Didn't have very good parenting skills, my parents. They were both young, but they never beat me. The home environment was always clean. I was never abused in that sense. But all that changed when I got involved in the juvenile justice system in Warren County. Sheriff Bullock walks in. I was scared. Like the last interaction I had with this man, I was being molested. And
we would hear as the story went on that Bullock did that a lot. He would go and pick up kids at various locations when by all rights, he was not the person who should be doing it.
I was terrified. I don't know, I didn't want to be alone with this man, but I had no choice.
The dread that he described in seeing this man who had already touched him and already molested him, it was like he already knew something really bad was going to happen. And he was right.
He was supposed to take you to the shelter.
Correct.
And instead he took you someplace else.
Correct. He turned off this road onto a dirt road. And he went up the road, sort of made a U-turn, and stopped the car, turned the lights off. I remember he just started touching me. He was a really big guy. He was like an ogre. I could smell his body odor. I could smell liquor. The sheriff raped me. It hurt. I was in pain. It's not just sexual assault. It's the murder of a person's soul. There's no getting over that. Said the sheriff hurt me. He grabbed me by the shirt and chest and snatched me off the top bunk. He told me, "Don't ever say those things again." And he punched me in my stomach and knocked the wind out of me. And I just curled up on the bottom bunk at that point and just alone and scared and just cried and just suffered alone.
You tried to report what happened.
I did.
And you got punched in the stomach by a staff member.
I got berated, I got threatened and assaulted for doing so.
Did you ever try to report it again after that?
Not for years.
The longer I work in this field, the more horrifying it is to me how many people can ignore child sex abuse over the years and not feel obligated to do something about it.
This was a kid who was in the county's care because he was being neglected by his parents. The system was supposed to take care of him because his parents weren't doing a good enough job. The system let him down in the most profound way you could imagine.
I was on my way to New York City hitchhiking, and he stopped and pulled over, and then he asked me to get into the car, and he told me he was a sheriff. I saw he had a badge, and he had had a gun also, I believe.
The kids, I'm sure, were raised either externally from the home or internally that you respect the sheriff, that you respect the police, or at least you fear them. And either one of those would play into the power of this sheriff's capacity to both abuse them and keep them silent.
We were talking, and I just started feeling dizzy, like I started getting confused. My head was spinning, and I kept going unconscious and coming back. At one point, I kind of woke up, and he was like on top of me, and he was naked, and I was naked. Physical pain is something I'll never forget. It was terrible, and it was just very traumatic.
Really felt for Jack. He obviously had somewhat of a tough childhood, and he was on his way to New York, and he never made it.
It's something you never forget. It led to alcohol abuse and drug abuse, and it just negatively impacted my whole life, basically, for a long time. It still does today.
I feel shame for it. Somehow I feel like, and I know better, but it doesn't change that you feel somehow responsible. I feel like he had a gun. I feel like maybe I could have took the gun or just did something more to stop it.
I mean, you know you were a kid, right? You were 11 years old.
I know he was a giant.
There was nothing you could have done. You know that.
I do.
You have a continual state of fear, feeling trapped, and then you add in that other element of being shamed at the same time. You're going to have cases of post-traumatic stress.
I don't trust anybody anymore. Friendships and relationships are far and few between.
One of the keys to our story was that we were able to get years of documents that would otherwise have been sealed.
Employees testifying in a deposition, a legal deposition, things they heard, things they suspected, things they were concerned about, trying to report things.
There was one sheriff's officer who said Bullock showed an interest in young boys, in fact, usually boys with blonde hair and blue eyes. Another said there were comments on a daily basis. They said it was just understood throughout the whole courthouse that Bullock was interested in boys. And one of the most damning comments came from a former sheriff's officer who said it was almost like a running joke. She said people would see Bullock walking down the hall with a boy and they would snicker and laugh about it. This all spoke to this being more than just one sheriff who maybe have been out of control. It spoke to a culture of silence. In one case, the shelter director's secretary said she warned her boss, the shelter director, and was told some things are better off not known. It sounds like it was an open secret that everybody knew this was going on.
Which is true. But I find that disgusting. I never found it funny. And I didn't think there was anything humorous in being either molested or raped.
So you end up with this combination of laughing it off, it can't quite be that serious, and protecting the individual that everybody knows.
There are some county employees who were very courageous in this, who did the right thing, who reported this. The problem is it fell on deaf ears.
I'm sure you feel like he escaped justice.
Justice delayed is justice denied. And I feel that even if he would have been convicted, too little too late. He ruined my life. He ruined countless other lives. Yet he's lived with impunity. They've been dragging this out for nearly a decade. Just countless amounts of litigation, thousands of hours of frivolous motions.
In one ruling, the judge actually called the county out for its tactics. He said in 40 years as an attorney and a judge, he had seen few cases where this kind of scorched earth litigation strategy had been used in what he called such an obnoxious degree. It had gone on for 8 years. And so the victims were trying to step up the pressure. And we saw a series of protests and rallies.
Do the right thing! Warren County!
And what is the Bullock case showing? Well, you guys can do whatever you want to do and there's going to be a limited consequence?
We deserve our dignity. I mean, the fact that they refuse to acknowledge and accept or apologize, they've condoned it.
The victims just wanted some acknowledgement that what had happened to them was bad. And so I thought, let me ask that to the council. Let me ask that to the commissioner. The question tonight is, are you tonight finally willing to publicly acknowledge and condemn the abuse that these victims suffered?
Mr. King, we're not going to make any comment on this, Mr. King.
You can't condemn child sex?
Sir, I'm not going to allow any outbursts from the public.
What do you hope to achieve?
Hopefully I can find some justice and some closure to the whole thing. Somebody at least say that it did happen and we're sorry about it, something.
I think I'm fighting for respect. I think I'm fighting for acknowledgement. And I think I'm fighting for justice and for them for once to be honest.
These victims were trusting us to tell their story. And they had waited so long for justice that I felt enormous pressure to do justice in telling their story.
I don't expect any justice, honestly. We never have had justice, but I try to be optimistic and I try to keep fighting and keep pushing through. I mean, if not me, then who?
Hard to imagine what must have been going through his mind to finally have his moment in court.
As torrid as it may be, it's the truth, and the truth needs no alibi. It needs to be shared and expressed. That way the healing can begin. In this courthouse across the street, I was repeatedly molested. Many victims were targeted and preyed upon in this very building as well. This is not a hall of justice, but it's a monument to despair and anguish.
A man who says he was raped by the former Warren County Sheriff is getting his day in court.
It's a huge event in these people's lives, especially for somebody like WM. He's been fighting for so long. He's been fighting since he was 11 years old to get some form of justice. It's very tough to prosecute or to sue in cases that are decades old. People die, people move away, people forget the details.
And there isn't sort of concrete evidence to say there was an email sent or there was this or that, it's just discussion among coworkers.
Did you suspect Sheriff Bullock was sexually molesting children?
Yes. Like he couldn't take his eyes off them. He would just stare.
He would get them back rubs. And for somebody like the sheriff, who is a high authority, showing them attention, it was very strange.
What was really striking about this was that witness after witness came forward and they told a very consistent story.
And he also used to, in quotes, counsel them, close quotes, in his office, and the door was closed and nobody was supposed to disturb him.
They never knew for sure.
Is it fair to say you did not actually witness Sheriff Bullock engaged in molestation of a child in your presence?
Not in my presence, no.
They didn't know anything beyond rumors.
Did you have any knowledge of sexual abuse by Bullock?
No, none whatsoever.
The problem with that was, even if they had heard rumors or they'd heard jokes, should they have continued to allow him unrestricted one-on-one access to kids? That was the balance that the jury was going to have to figure out.
Did you have suspicions that Sheriff Bullock was molesting the children?
Yes.
Did you bring your suspicions to your boss?
Yes. And then he would just kind of say, well, sometimes there are things that, that maybe you shouldn't know or, shouldn't ask about.
If you have been warned that there might be something inappropriate going on, even if you don't know it for a fact, should you have some level of protection? Should you say, leave the door open? Should you say, have a witness present? And Warren County didn't do any of those things.
Dramatic testimony today from a man who says he was raped by a powerful New Jersey sheriff as a child.
And I remember just the pain, and I remember it hurt. I just wanted it to end. It just went on for, it went on forever.
Here he is on the stand, finally, able to tell his story.
And I said the sheriff raped me, and he snatched me off the top bunk, and he punched me in the stomach. Like, the message was clear. He was telling me not to speak about it. He was telling me to keep my mouth shut.
And it's like all the eggs are in this basket. I just felt for him.
Let's say it never happened, he would still have vast majority of problems and issues, which he did have.
I guess that argument is, you know what? These are throwaway kids anyway. They had to be put in the shelter anyway. They didn't have a good home life. They were probably damaged more from that than being raped by the sheriff.
Okay, are you able to look at that diagnosis and attribute it to any one traumatic event?
No.
Why can't you limit it to just one traumatic event?
Because there were so many.
It's a disgusting defense. The notion that any child was already so far gone that we don't need to worry about the rapes by someone in their universe it's both scientifically incorrect, but it's also just cruel.
Doctor, isn't it your opinion that Mr. at age 11 was damaged goods before the rape?
Yes.
That's not a defense. That's a defense that could end up really backfiring on the defendant.
We had a defense attorney who specializes in child sex abuse cases say, I wouldn't try that defense. That's a defense that could backfire. And yet at the same time, defense attorneys use this defense because it works. If you can successfully argue that the victim was damaged already, then you can limit the financial verdict.
The county disputes that we ever knew anything about his abuse and that we permitted it to happen. There's no proof that we knew. None whatsoever.
It's often said that a society is judged by how we treat the most vulnerable among us. Children are the most vulnerable among us. Children. He was a child.
After a few weeks of testimony, the case finally goes to the jury. And then they're out for a couple of days. And at that point, who knows what they're thinking?
Yeah, well, I actually was wondering why the jury was taking so long. Are they getting hung up on something?
Nobody really knows what's going on in that jury room. But with each passing hour, both sides are getting more and more nervous. And with each passing hour, the pressure to settle gets greater.
Jury was deliberating while they were coming up with this. At any moment, they could have come out with a verdict either one way or the other.
The county's worried about a $100 million verdict. I mean, it could be anywhere from $1 to $100 million. Nobody knows. So $5 million is where they settle. In hindsight, maybe WM could have gotten a lot more, but nobody knew that at the time. To have an entire jury talk to us, unprecedented.
It just broke my heart, and frankly, I was in tears as they were announcing the settlement. We wanted to make that statement that we believe WM. I just want to send that message out to anyone there, like, who experienced this. Whether you choose to come forward or not, I understand, but just know we believe that it happened, and we're sorry.
I've been covering trials for 3 decades. I have never seen a jury wait outside to talk to a plaintiff. It just doesn't happen.
To just settle it was frustrating, but I'm glad to see that WM did walk out of the courthouse
looked a little bit lighter. But I'm just really happy that WM seems really happy. And I think that's the most important thing, and that we're, sending the message that we can't let this happen. She said after having been raped, the rape didn't really impact him because he'd already been through so much that he was a lost cause, essentially. And the idea that we have throwaway children in society it's not something I'm willing to accept.
Some days I'm fine, some days I'm not. I'm just find closure in my life and try to move on and try to begin the healing. But it's no silver bullet. A lot more still needs to be done. But I hope now, once and for all, that they will finally be held accountable.